This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, it's Celeste Acker, CFO of Fair Market, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 943.
Yeah, so over the next 12 months, we're going to finish the synergy capture and the integration of some M&A that had been done in the past. That's been a long time coming. We're investing significantly in marketing and business development to try to figure out new ways to create customer relationships and unlock new ways to use domains more broadly. And then on my side, while we're not necessarily, we don't have a mandate to go public as our exit, we could very well do other things, but I am undertaking a gradual IPO preparedness strategy to just make sure that we're shoring up the things that a company our size should be doing anyway, now that we've combined another business with ours, and make sure that we're ready to go down that path if and when the opportunity presents itself.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Donald McClure, CFO of Identity Digital. Back in 2017, Donald McClure had only recently been appointed Vice President of FP&A at Brinks Home Security, when the company's CFO at the time decided that it was the right time for retirement. Unbeknownst to McClure, Brinks was about to open a transformative chapter, one that involved a massive restructuring and a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. For McClure, a 6-year Brinks veteran, the Chapter 11 bankruptcy process proved to be yet one more experience that would advance him down the CFO path. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
Hello, we're speaking to Donald McClure, CFO of Identity Digital. Donald, welcome.
Hey, Jack. Thanks for having me.
So, Donald, we're going to begin by asking you to we're wondering about those experiences that you feel prepared you for a finance leadership role. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, sure. So I majored in finance in college. So sort of very early on was sort of headed down some kind of finance path. But, fast forward through the early stages of my career, I was an investment banker and then took a corporate development job at a public company. But it was really at that company where I stayed for about 7 years. The company was Ascent Capital Group, and then Brinks Home Security was the operating business. Was where I really sort of started down a path that was going to lead to finance leadership within an operating company. And so, it was a stint where I wore many hats over the years. I started in corporate development as a relatively young associate, and had a seat at the table for a lot of interesting decisions, mergers and acquisitions, doing stock buybacks, managing cash on our balance sheet, and then our CFO asked me to move down into the operation. So I moved from the holding company where I was playing, a sort of strategy and corporate development role into the operation itself as the VP of FP&A, and retained a lot of that strategy and corp dev responsibility, but got my hands dirty, so to speak, in the operation of a fairly sizable home security business in Brinks Home Security, and that's where I started working with cross functionally with all the departments in a much tighter, sort of more ongoing way.
Just curious about that corporate development team. Now that's part of the holding company, and then you go to Brinks. Is that right? Yeah.
So Ascent Capital Group was the holding company, and it was a public holding company. We had 5 employees, and that I was one of in corp dev, but CEO, general counsel, and corp dev team. And then Brinks Home Security was our operating business down in Dallas. So I moved from the holding company down into the operation in Dallas.
Can I ask about corporate development? You left sort of your banking career and entered through the corporate development door. Are you, a senior member of that team? Are you coming in as the newbie? So you come in at a more junior level? How does it work?
Yeah, so in this case, we had a senior vice president who was heading up the corp dev function. Ascent had recently purchased Brinks. It wasn't Brinks at the time. It was called Monotronics, but we later licensed the Brinks Home Security brand. So they had bought it from a private equity firm. And after that acquisition, Ascent had previously been in some other businesses that they sold off. And there was about $300 million on the balance sheet at the holding company level that was kind of left over after purchasing Brinks. So it was just a 2-person corp dev team. So I guess you'd say I was as senior as anyone else other than the head of the function. And it was just the 2 of us. But my banking career had been in the security sector specifically. So I had some very relevant industry expertise that led me to that job. And it was a situation where we were looking to take that. By the time I got there, it was about $250 million of cash, and put it to work through M&A in and around this core asset that we had purchased with Brinks. And so we did just that. We did, shortly after I joined, a little over a $500 million acquisition of one of our competitors, merged it into the operation down in Dallas. And then later on, we bought a much smaller but sort of different go-to-market strategy with the DIY security business.
And we see that you're, again, you made an investment of, 6.5 years there. There was a succession of promotions. You're becoming perhaps more senior. FP&A, of course, is the skill set, but is there also an FP&A team where the corporate development and FP&A people come together, or were they sort of the same professionals?
Yeah, so when I was at the holding company level, I worked with the FP&A team down in the operation a decent amount, mostly with the head of that group. But there were a handful of people in FP&A that I got to know even before I moved down into the business and started leading that team. So we worked hand in hand on a lot of putting board materials together and working through projection models and when we were doing acquisitions and things. But we were really leading the diligence and the valuation modeling at the corp dev level, and then working with the operating team to figure out how to integrate it and how to really make it happen.
Now, when you leave Brinks, Home Security, you step into a CFO role. And I'm wondering, what was maybe one of the other milestones for you at Brinks that really made you, well, let's say CFO ready? What would that have been?
When I was in the VP of FP&A role, we had the CFO that had put me in that role quickly retired after I actually joined. And so we got a new CFO, which kind of thrust me into an even greater leadership position, just helping the new CFO get up to speed and sort of being a number two to him and a close confidant. And then a year or two go by, and we actually end up needing to restructure our debt, and we ended up using the Chapter 11 bankruptcy process to do that. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But that whole process, which took place over roughly 15 months, where I was at the center of solving this very obviously important problem of how we're going to fund this company, and how we can make it sustainable. That was kind of the culmination of my experience before becoming a CFO that really I think put me in a position to go out and find a job like that. And so that's more or less what I did. We filed for Chapter 11, and my work was kind of done at that point. It was a prepackaged process that was all lined up, and so I had been looking around near the end of that, and found something later that year at Pelletas as CFO.
Well, now was it and what type of company was Pelletas? Just a brief line or two.
Yeah, Pelletas was much smaller healthcare software company. It was a SaaS model. We sold, private equity owned, so going from a public company to a private equity backed company. But we sold revenue cycle management software to hospitals. Is sort of the short of it.
Well, we look forward to hearing more about the Chapter 11 filing and the role you played in, and I know you hinted that you might have more to share there. But I'm curious, just on this first step out as a CFO, was it a recruiter who helped you, or was it your network, or how did you make that?
It was my network. It was actually the retired CFO that had convinced me to move down into the operation at Brinks. So he retired. And then quickly got involved with the private equity sponsor that owned Pelletas, and so when they were looking for a CFO, I was the first to that business.
You were the first CFO for Pelletas. Wow.
I was. So I was the first sort of professional, part of the first professional management team. It was a founder run business, husband and wife team that sold to private equity, and they brought in a CEO, and he built a management team that was sort of taking things over and trying to take that business, make it scalable, and kind of take it to the next level.
So, and just to point out, your first CFO tour of duty was roughly 3 years, and we find you walking through the door at Identity Digital. We want to ask you some more career-related questions later, but right now let's find out about the company you joined. And open your second chapter, CFO chapter, with Identity Digital. What type of company is this, and what are its offerings today?
Yeah, so it was something I wasn't familiar with until I got the opportunity to interview. But we're in the internet domain space. So we're the world's largest owner of a portfolio of what's called top-level domains, or TLDs. And so everyone knows .com, .net, .org. Those are sort of the legacy TLDs. We have a portfolio of TLDs that span a wide range of generic and very vertically specific things. So just some examples: .pro, .live, .today. All these things you can set up domains to run a website, run a business as a internet creator. .bio is a big one that we're pushing lately, and then we have some more specific things that might be relevant to your audience: .finance, .company, .llc, things like that. And then some fun stuff like .fyi, .wtf, .ninja. So there's about 270 of these things that we own, and we kind of sit at the wholesale level, make these virtual real estate spaces available to the world. And people would go through a registrar. GoDaddy would be the one that people know the most. GoDaddy would be a customer of ours, and so you go to GoDaddy, or we own a registrar also named .com, and register a domain, and we sort of make that the infrastructure behind that work, so that if you type in that domain, it goes to the right place. And it's a little known corner of the internet that is actually really interesting. It's a recurring revenue business, very high margin. We're sort of a rule of 70 company. So
How old a company is it? Does it go back to the origins of the web, or
it's come together. So the core lineage goes back about 10 years when our founders applied for all of these top level domains. There's a big process run by a nonprofit quasi regulator called ICANN that took applications for new top level domains. So our founders raised a bunch of money and applied for these things and ended up with the portfolio that we have today. And over the years, there have been some other acquisitions of companies that have a little bit older lineage, but have sort of come into the fold to help create what we are today.
And what would you, can you give us maybe a short history of its capital structure, or who's behind this company?
Yeah, so today we're private equity owned by a firm called Ethos Capital. We have some other co-investors that sit alongside them, but it's private equity owned, pretty simple capital structure. We've got a big revolver and term loan facility that is all I really need to worry about right now. It was done in the sort of the heyday when you could get really favorable terms in your credit agreement, and so I'm happy to sort of step into what we're managing here relative to some of the things I've done in the past, that were much more stringent. But we've got a private equity ownership and a fairly simple but sizable. It's a high leverage business given the profitability and the recurring nature of it, but it's very manageable.
So you joined them. What is the chapter that you're hoping to author for them? What is it that you're opening here for them? Where are you taking them?
Yeah, so when Ethos bought the business, they more or less simultaneously bought another company called Affilius, and so my company was originally known as Donuts, and Donuts and Affilius merged as part of the acquisition by Ethos, and so we've been over the last few years before I joined, sort of integrating all the back end technology that makes our part of the internet work. And so with me joining and some other new members of the management team, we're sort of finishing that final integration, getting everything into, capturing all the synergies, and getting things set up for rapid scaling as we get everything together. And so, there's some new exciting things that we're doing on strategic business development that, some innovative things that we're working on, and really just, we're investing a lot in marketing now, trying to get the word out. A lot of your listeners probably aren't aware that you could buy a domain on .finance or .llc. And so we're trying to spread that word, and, we're actually a pretty sizable business already, a little over 250 million at top line. And if we can spread the word and sort of make this a well-known thing, this business could really scale rapidly. So just getting it set up for that, and our private equity firm will want to exit at some point. So I've had experience. At my last company, Pelotas, we sold it to another healthcare technology business. So I've been through a sale process. I've been in a public company. And so, going public is a potential exit for us as well, and just getting things ready for that and taking it, to the next level.
Well, you are acquisitions on the menu here as you look to?
Yeah, it's not a huge part of our strategy, but it is on the table. There's some TLDs that are owned by sort of individuals or one at a time that we acquire from time to time. We do have some competitors that we'd be interested in acquiring if you can make the numbers make sense, so that run other TLDs. But I think most of the M&A strategy, with the Affilius and Donuts combination is behind us, and it's more about sort of taking what we have and building on it, taking it to new heights. Well,
we always like to ask you about your top of mind metrics and how you look into this business. What is it that you're, paying close attention to, either daily, weekly? What share with us some of your the metrics that you look at first thing in the morning. What are you looking at?
Yeah. So it's really all about the lifetime value of a domain. We don't have a one-to-one relationship with the end user because they go through our channel partners, and we're kind of wholesalers. But we have a lot of data with over 10 million domains under management that informs us as to what the lifetime value of that will be, and therefore how much money we can spend on marketing or other sales tactics to try to generate additional registrations. So it's lifetime value. When we have a new customer come in, there's usually 1 year registrations. You can register for up to 10, but there's all your classic recurring revenue metrics around retention and contribution margin, what the unit economics are to those domains under management. So lifetime value is a big one.
When you arrived, did you feel as if you had to change, I guess, sales philosophy when it came to customers? There were certain customers, perhaps, that were just a better match, and therefore you'd be building a better relationship with them.
Yeah. So when I joined, there was already pretty well developed metrics and a solid team. Nothing was fundamentally broken, but one thing that we've done since I've gotten here is really put an emphasis on our pricing strategy. So we have the ability to price the 270 TLDs that we own and operate independently of one another. It has to be the same price for everyone, but we can take different strategies with different TLDs. And so we've put a lot of effort into some machine learning and AI tools that inform us how to set the price at a level that will maximize the value that we're creating. The volume coming in combined with the lifetime value of any one registration. And so there's been a lot of emphasis around that, and with that comes a little bit of a shift from just focusing on unit retention to now revenue retention, because we're raising price and we might be losing a few more at the renewal point because the price is higher, but are we capturing more value in the long term by taking this strategy? And so that's one thing that we've shifted a little bit.
It would seem many finance leaders have begun to more closely examine how their organizations are leveraging AI and whether there are areas they might be lagging in terms of costs and time savings, as well as other strategic benefits that AI promises. Has your team undergone an AI reality check recently? Have you looked into, hey, are we doing this right?
Yeah, not so much in the finance org or sort of the back office, but we actually, even before all of this latest buzz around AI, had been working on a number of AI related initiatives. If you include machine learning in sort of the broader AI umbrella. I mentioned earlier the pricing strategy is a very large data project that we hired a consultant to help us build some sophisticated modeling to help us figure out how to optimize price there. We have another natural language processing project, that's probably a little bit more similar to what people think about lately with AI, where we're trying to value, like, what are the most valuable domains that might exist on a particular TLD, like .finance. So, we can identify those premium names and try to sell them at a premium price because we have the ability to price discriminate like that. And then strategically, there's a lot of really interesting things going on with, if you think of Squarespace and Wix, the companies that help individuals, creators, businesses create websites, they can do that much more rapidly using AI. And there's a lot of talk about those lately. And so we see that as something that can really accelerate the adoption of some of our TLDs. So .bio is a really good example where we want creators, Instagram, YouTube creators to use a .bio domain, set up their link in bio through that, and AI is something that we think can really accelerate that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. we're going to jump to our finance strategic moment question, where we ask you to look back over your career and share a moment of strategic insight that you've experienced along the way. Again, this might have happened 20 years ago, might have happened, last week. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, so I referenced it a little bit earlier, Jack, but the going through the Chapter 11 bankruptcy process, which is really just the culmination of a long process and a long tenure that I had with Brinks Home Security. It was a series of strategic moments, I would say. So I had been with the company for about 6 years, had refinanced the business many times, done M&A financing, and had all gone as planned. But it became clear to us at some point that we weren't going to be able to refinance things on a sustainable basis, and we needed to come up with a solution to that. And so we, through a series of working with investment bankers and lawyers, obviously, ended up negotiating a prepackaged restructuring that we utilized the Chapter 11 process to facilitate, but all the work was kind of done in advance. And just being part of that process, I was serving as the number two to a relatively new CFO going through that process. So it was sort of very critical to his success in this, so working closely with our general counsel and our CEO, helping tell the story of the company in an environment where you're not just trying to continue what you've been doing and refinance it the way you always have, but really taking the constraints off, looking at things more creatively. What is the right capital structure for this business? We don't get to just refinance it the way it always has been, but what's the right capital structure and debt level? And as FP&A professionals, we're in the business of producing forecasts, and they have consequences to them. They're obviously important, but when you go through this kind of process in a public company setting with, we had 4 different types of debt, and so all various stakeholders at the table trying to help figure out, how we're going to structure this. It was really sort of eye-opening, the importance of what we were doing, the stakes that we had. We ended up having our junior creditors bring quite a bit of money into the business to help sort of facilitate the whole restructuring, and just management sitting at the middle, helping all these parties negotiate and figure out where things are going to land. Just fostered an ability to have that sort of creative, out of the box thinking that when you look at a problem, like you don't have to do it the way you've always done it. What are other ways that we creatively solve that? And so I think that engendered in me an ability to sort of take a different perspective on things, and really prepared me for future success in the finance world.
From episode 883, this is 1 Minute with Javier Machave, CFO of Heathrow Airport.
And that means that Heathrow is the largest port of the UK as well. So 40% of the exports of the country by value travels in the belly of the aircraft. You have traveling with you salmon, diamonds, horses, cars, pharma, ventilators, masks, vaccines. And I think that that's one of the things that makes Heathrow special. We are literally the gateway connecting the UK with global growth. And it's not because it has huge commodities, oil, or intellectual property, but it's very much because of its trading power.
We want you to think back to that first CFO role after you stepped into it, and that first 60 days. As you think back what you experienced, what is the piece of advice you would give that person? What is it?
Yeah, one thing that I think probably a lot of finance people fall into is thinking that we have all the answers and we understand things potentially better than some of our partners in marketing or operations or technology or the CEO. And so being a listener, hearing other people's thoughts and expertise, and really thinking critically about it, I think is really important. Something that someone told me much earlier in my career, so I heard this. It wasn't something that I wish someone told me, but someone did tell me, and it sort of stuck with me. Was when you're thinking about your career as a finance leader or anything really, don't be overly prescriptive about the direction, the end point of where you want to end up, because you can put blinders on and miss opportunities that way. I didn't set out thinking I was going to go down a CFO track, but I did investment banking, corporate development. That led to some operational roles. And so having more of a, be deliberate about it and build experience, make sure you're growing and doing new things, but focusing more than 3 to 5 years out can really close you off to opportunities. So that was something that someone told me that has really stuck with me. And I've, ended up in a potentially a different spot than I thought, but very happily where I am now.
Donald, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. We're wondering if you have a personal habit, part of a daily routine, something that people point at you. It's the way he's always done it. Anything come to mind, something that sets you apart out there?
Yeah. So it's, I was a distance runner in high school and college. And so any kind of endurance sports have kind of stuck with me. So that's something I do to sort of get time to think and clear my mind. Sometimes, I've gotten into mountain biking living in Colorado here. And that's something that I've really found enjoyable for, the reason you get out on the trail and there are rocks and trees and things. And sometimes it's harder for us to separate from our job and thinking about, what's coming next week, next quarter, next year. Riding the mountain bike gives me a chance to really just focus on what's immediately in front of me and not have time to think about everything else that's going on. So that's something that I've really enjoyed. It's similar, like to ski in the winter here as well.
When did you take up mountain biking? Is that something, and again, you mentioned earlier, I think before we got on, that you had lived in Denver. You had an earlier chapter. Was mountain biking something you picked up, after that first chapter? It's something you picked up this chapter?
No. So I started when we first moved out to Colorado in my 20s. Having been a distance runner in college, I wasn't training enough to run as fast as I had, but mountain biking was something new and different that I could take on, and really found it enjoyable.
No interest in trying an electric bike?
I recently bought an electric bike to take my kids to school, actually. So their school is pretty close by, and I can load them up in the morning on the back of it and ride down to the school.
So they're not on their own bikes. You're all together on this one bike.
We're all together on this one bike.
How far do you go?
Their school's about a mile from here, but I've gone on longer rides with them, and they're still relatively young. Our daughter's in preschool; she's about to turn 5. Our son's about 2.5, and we just had another baby who's about 7 weeks old now. So the 2 older kids are riding the e-bike with me to school.
I was going to say, you're going to need a bigger bike. Yeah.
One of them's going to have to get off and ride her own bike.
Yeah, maybe. That's right. You got to keep pushing that direction. Would you have a book recommendation for us? Doesn't have to be a business book. Maybe it's something, just influence your thinking in one way or another. Anything?
Yeah, one that I actually, my CEO for my first CFO job asked me to read before I started. I was coming into what had been a husband and wife entrepreneurial organization that got its first private equity and sort of institutional money. And the book was called, and you'll have to forgive the French here, but Don't F It Up. But it was written out. And it was really sort of enlightening as to the responsibility of a CEO or a CFO, senior management coming into a family business or an entrepreneurial business that's getting its first investment and sort of professional management team, and just the politics and emotions involved with that, I thought was kind of fun and also good perspective to have coming into something that, our founders were still on our board and had, thoughts about the business. They were still invested in it financially, but they weren't calling the shots anymore. And we needed to sort of honor what they had built, take it in the direction that we knew was best, but do it in a way that involved them. And so, yeah, that was an interesting one that he had me read.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had it before, so thank you for that. It does sound kind of appropriate. And what every CFO, you could give it to your new FP&A leader or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But we are up to our last question, and we'd like to ask you to look forward for us for the next 12 months and share what your priorities are as CFO.
Yeah, so over the next 12 months, I kind of mentioned earlier, we're going to finish the synergy capture and the integration of some M&A that had been done in the past. That's been a long time coming. We're investing significantly in marketing and business development to try to figure out new ways to create customer relationships and unlock new ways to use domains more broadly. And so that's, those are the big sort of operational focuses. And then on my side, while we're not necessarily, we don't have a mandate to go public as our exit, we could very well do other things, but I am undertaking a gradual IPO preparedness strategy to just make sure that we're shoring up the things that a company our size should be doing anyway, now that we've combined another business with ours, and make sure that we're ready to go down that path if and when the opportunity presents itself. Because, as you know, that window opens, and sometimes your investors say, let's go, let's do it. And so we've been working behind the scenes to get as ready as we can, doing things that sort of no regrets we'd want to do even as a private company, but we're ready to take that next step if we need to.
Donald McClure, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate you having me. It's been a great conversation.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.